the friends. And Andy, it's good to see you and your family with us. I've seen Andy several times while we were here. I understand you're going to lead singing today. All right. That sounds good. We're glad that you're here. I'll give you two little updates, and then I'll get on into the lessons, because I don't want to take the next hour of time to do this, because next hour I've got a 2-hour sermon. And I'm trying to get it down into 20 minutes, and I don't know how in the world I'm going to do it. So I got to lunch. Okay, if I got lunch today, I can go over a little bit, right? But I do want to say these two things, and then y'all can tell the people who come in. First of all, Sydney is doing much better. She has been back to Pittsburgh on her second trip, and she had made 25% improvement. She is doing even better now than she was then. She goes back to Pittsburgh in 2 weeks for another treatment. Every time she goes there, with the travel expenses and with the doctors and all that, it's $1,500. So it's a pretty good whack for her to go. And we've raised some money for her to go there, but she's doing good. She's been promoted to manager at Chick-fil-A. She's thrilled about that. She's going to school at Georgia State, taking some classes. She's already a junior. She's gone 1 year. She took enough AP courses in high school in that she's already a junior there, and so she's ahead a little. I guess the biggest news about Sydney is she's getting married in November. Things have worked good for her in her recovery, and she is dearly in love with this guy that's just a super Christian. He has a medical background too, so he'll be able to help take care of her medical needs. And so we're getting a new granddaughter-in-law in September. Aaron's getting married, and we're getting a grandson-in-law in November. Sydney's getting married. Now the rest of them better hold off for a little while, because two weddings. That's right. Linda can't afford that many dresses. Yeah. Second thing was, I'll give you an update on Linda. I guess you can almost look at her and get the update. But we appreciate so much the cards, the support, the prayers. It's been a very trying time for us, as all of you know, and you've kept up with Facebook. It was so close to me being here by myself this morning. I mean, that was, and she realizes that, one thing that I think y'all be proud of, though, and I was, she asked Zach one Saturday or Friday. Zach is one of our grandchildren, and she said, "What about Zach? Where is Zach? He'd been off to Searcy for the whatever that is they have for the young people out there. Some of you at Harding College, some of you probably are familiar with that. But he came on Saturday to see her, and she said, Zach, you knew that I almost died. He said he didn't know what to say. And here's a guy that's in the 10th grade, so he didn't know what to say. But finally he said, yeah. But this is what just really will through you. She said, but I really wasn't a bit afraid. And isn't that a good feeling that when you come, that's the feeling that we all should have, is that when we come that close, that we're not afraid. And I hope that that's the feeling that you have. Hebrews chapter 11, before we go in this morning. I know you're going to say, oh man, I've heard this so many times, I'm sick of it. Well, let's hear it one more time. Hebrews, all of you know what it is before you even get there. But I'm going to use a little different approach this morning, if you'll allow me to do that, on looking at Hebrews chapter 11. I'm going to let you help me. First of all, let's start off with verse 1. Can someone read that for me? Okay, faith is always something that is not seen. Now, we have faith in everything that we do. What about when you got married? Was there faith involved in that? Sure. When you had children and you raised your children. What about this? When services is over today and you go out and get in your automobile, do you have faith? You better have faith. Have faith that thing's going to crank and get you home. I suggest that there is faith involved in everything that we do. And especially there's faith involved when it comes to spiritual matters. And when we look at this, it says that faith is something that is unseen. Faith always involves the unseen. Because spiritually speaking, if it was seen, it kind of takes the faith part away, doesn't it? If it's unseen, faith then is involved. The world says seeing is believing. God says believing is seeing. Let's keep that in mind as we move on. Verse 2. Anyone? Verse 2.
Or when the elders obtain a good testimony.
Okay, in verse 2, we see that faith involves trusting God. Okay? There is a trust in God. When we look at all these heroes of faith in this chapter, every one of them were involved in some type of faith situation. And faith, and when we look at faith, we're empowered by this. And these men were empowered by the faith that they had received through believing in God. And faith wins God's approval. When we trust God, what are we going to do? What He wants us to do, right? If we trust God, if we trust Him with all our hearts, we are going to do what He has asked us and expects us to do. So faith wins God's approval when we obey Him, when we do what He's asked us to do. And it's not very hard, is it? Is being a Christian really hard? Not really. I mean, it's different. In some situations, you have to take a stand, and maybe it's hard, but it's not something that's impossible. Is what I'm really trying to say. Living for God is not something that is impossible. Verse 3.
By faith you understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is visible was not made out of what was visible.
What is created here, as mentioned in this verse? There's something that's created here. The world, the universe, the stars, the heavens, the earth, the planets. Have any of you ever studied the solar system? Yeah. How exact is it? Just like that every time, isn't it? Does it vary by any seconds at all? I mean, if it is, it can't be measured, right? All right. Who created something like this? God. God created it. Why can we send a man to the moon? Why can we put those rockets out in the space and they do exactly what they're supposed to do if they don't blow up before they get there? But what causes that? The cause is because it's so perfect and the timing is so perfect, right? The laws of physics, exactly right. The laws of physics. But when we look at this, we see that everything is perfectly made. And the world says science without faith. They say, well, it just happened. It just evolved. It just came about. Well, when we really look at that, and if we're honest with ourselves, and if we have an ounce of brain power at all, we will see that it was something besides just happening that caused all of these things to happen. So the universe can be explained by science, but science with faith, and when we put science and faith together, we can come up with a lot of ideas and a lot of things and a lot of learning, a lot of things that in our minds. So science with faith leads us to know God. He wants us to look out there and see the moon and the sun and the stars and the planets and see Him. Right? We see Him through our faith. The next verse, verse 4.
By faith Abel brought God a better offer than Cain did. By faith he was commended as righteous, when God spoke well of his offering. And by faith Abel still speaks, even though he is dead.
Abel offered a better sacrifice. There was only one reason, that it was a better sacrifice. What was that one reason? Follow God. It's what God asked for. What God asked for. That's the only reason that it was better. I'm sure that the sacrifice that were brought were the best by both of them. But God asked for. So, what I'm saying in this is that faith gains acceptance with God. Because Abel brought this sacrifice by faith. Faith equaled works in this case. What did he have to do? Well, he had to go out and did he have to get the animal? Did he have to slay the animal? Did he have to do all the things that they had to do? I'm not sure that all the preparations that they made and that day before they offered the sacrifice, but I know that it was some work involved. Most of you probably don't remember this, but I remember killing hogs. You don't remember killing hogs, do you? Killing hogs. Okay. It was a job, y'all. From the time that pig was shot till you hung it up, and, well, we won't go into all the gory details. The point I'm trying to make, it was work. We used to do that on Thanksgiving every year at my grandfather's house. We killed 3 pigs. And I was just a small guy at the time, and I don't remember a whole lot about it, but I remember that they worked from can to can. I mean, they got up early and started, and the women were grinding sausage when the sun went down. It was a lot of work involved. What I'm saying is when Abel went to offer this sacrifice, there was some work involved there before he got there to offer the sacrifice to God. And that will help us understand the work. But then, faith gains acceptance. God said, Abel, good guy. I appreciate you. You did exactly what I wanted you to do. You obeyed me. Because you obeyed me, I'm accepting your sacrifice. And that is a great feeling, guys, when something is accepted. Right? When God accepts. If you give a gift to someone and they say, I don't want it, is that going to hurt your feelings? It'll hurt your feelings a whole lot. Abel's giving a gift to God, and God said, I take it. I accept it. I appreciate it. You did what I wanted to do. So faith gains acceptance with God. Verse 5 and 6 together.
By faith Enoch was taken away, so that he did not see because God had taken him. For before he was taken, he had this testimony that he pleased God. But without faith it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him.
Wow. Wow. Faith pleases God. Now, young people, do you like to do something that makes your parents happy? You certainly don't want to make them sad, do you? You enjoy doing something that makes your parents happy. Wives, does it give you some type of enjoyment to do something for your husband to please him, and vice versa, husband to the wives? Sure it does. Or to a neighbor, or to a friend, or to a child, whatever. It helps us and it pleases us to be able to help someone and to make them happy, to please them. Enoch pleased God. Why? He walked with God. He had enough faith to believe and to accept and to follow what God wanted him to do, and that pleased God. Does God ever frown? Do you think that? I mean, I can't prove it one way or another, but do you think God frowns? Next hour, I'm going to talk about one time God frowned, okay? I believe God frowns. But I'd rather him smile at me than frown, hadn't you? I'd rather him say, I'm pleased, I accept, I'm pleased with what you're doing. And faith pleases God. I'll tell you about a young girl. Harold Savage, our preacher at Snellville, preached this woman's, or turned out to be a woman's funeral. It's a small congregation in Tennessee, and this little girl lived down the street from the church building. They were not members of the Church of Christ. Her parents did not attend there. She didn't attend there. At the age of about 8 or 9, she asked her parents could she go to church. And they said, yes, you can go, but we're not going to take you. If you want to go, you can just go on your own. You can get down there. You can walk down there and just go on your own, but you can go. So she started going. It wasn't long, well, I guess a couple of years, about the age of 12. She came home one Sunday morning and she says, Mom, Dad, I'm going to be baptized in just a little while up here in the creek. Would you go up there with me and watch me be baptized? And they looked at each other and they said, well, yeah. Yeah. We'll go up there and watch you be baptized. So just in a little while, they went up to the creek, and this 12-year-old girl was baptized. But she stayed in that congregation, and the congregation grew, and they went from the small building to a larger building, and she stayed in that community. She continued as a teenager and on through her adult life to help people. Take them food, sit with them when they were sick. She married. Her husband obeyed the gospel. And guess what? Her parents did too. Yeah, after a while, they obeyed the gospel also. She never moved away from that community. She never moved away from that congregation. She stayed there, and she worked the best that she could. And then, at a ripe old age, she passed away, and they called Harold to preach her funeral. He says, I went up there to preach the funeral of that woman who I knew that was such a godly woman from just the age of 12 years old all the way through adulthood. So they got to the building, and the building was packed full. People were standing and people were outside that couldn't even get into the building to attend that lady's funeral. And why did I tell you all of that? I told you all of that because faith pleases God. This girl developed faith at a young age. She lived that faith. She worked that faith. People believed in her. God believed in her. And look what happened. The tribute that was paid to her when she passed on in that little country town in Tennessee. Faith pleases God. And it's the same thing in our life today. Verse 7.
By faith Noah was warned about things not yet seen, and holy people built an ark to save his family. By his faith he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with faith.
Faith saves your family. Okay? Now I want to say that one more time because this is important. This is important to people who have children. This is important to people who will have children. This is important to grandparents. Faith saves a family. Noah and his family, and that's emphasized, not just Noah, but his family were saved because of the faith that he had and they had in building the ark. And we'll talk about that some more next hour too. It's hard sometimes to keep these two apart, isn't it, Chuck? You get involved in two different lessons. But faith saves family. Listen, I'm very fortunate to have 3 girls who are Christians. They're married Christians. And at this time, Monty's been appointed elder at Snellville, by the way. Most all of you have known Monty. He's come here and spoke on many occasions. I have 2 sons-in-law who are elders in the church. I have the other son-in-law is a deacon in the church. All of them teach classes. All of them are very faithful. Every one of my grandchildren that's old enough to be baptized has been baptized. It was not by accident. I tried to teach my girls. They tried to teach their children. They looked for husbands who would help them get to heaven. And faith saves families. My girls were growing up. I always told them when they would bring a boy to the house to date him, I says, listen, I don't want you to date any boy that you wouldn't marry. And they looked at me, Dad, we're too young to think about it. I said, I don't want you to date any boy that you wouldn't marry. And I went on to the next one. I want you to date Christians. Because, listen, you don't know who you're going to fall in love with. You date someone and you say, well, this was just a date. You don't know that you're not going to fall in love with that person. And so I always told them that. I'd write them notes and put it in the lunch boxes. I'd write notes and I'd put it under their pillow so when they would unmake their bed at night, they'd find this note. Sometimes I put a note on the bathroom mirror. All doing they got to sometimes saying, Dad, where's the note today? Because maybe I missed putting one up there. But I feel like that made an impression. I felt like that was important. Linda did the best she could in trying to teach these girls the way. In fact, Linda's the one that started all this because she's the one that converted me to the church. And so she's the one that got all this stuff going to start with. I'll tell you something else. Faith can save your family too. You never can give up on your family. Family is important. Linda's sister-in-law was raised in the church. every one of you probably would have a story much like the one that I have, or much like the couple that I'm going to tell you now. But the point I'm trying to now, let's not forget the point is faith saves family. Okay? Linda has a sister-in-law raised in the church. Graduated from GACS, never baptized. Went all the way through GAC, went through the first part of her life, never was baptized. She went to services Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. She went to ladies' Bible class. She helped with the projects that the ladies did. She did all these things, but she was never baptized. I was going to Fairview to hold a gospel meeting. Fairview is where she attended. So before I went, and I wrote her a letter, and I said, listen, all you need to do is trust God enough to be baptized. You go to services, you're a good person, you don't do the things that are wrong, but you need to be baptized. And I hope that during the week that I'm there, you'll let me baptize you. Every night during that meeting, I'd stand there and say, come on. And she didn't do it. She didn't. That woman was not baptized until her first daughter was baptized. And when her first daughter was baptized, she came to the building and she says, I want to be baptized too. Faith saves family, and you can't ever give up on family. Here's one better than that. Linda has an uncle. We went to see the uncle that was at that point terminally ill the day that Linda got so sick and almost died herself. We were in Knoxville visiting him when she started going down. We had been working with this guy for years. All the family members had talked to him and talked to him and talked to him, and he would not respond in any way. In fact, he studied to disprove the Bible. He spent all his life trying to disprove the Bible. He did not believe that there was just one God. He did not believe that the Bible was inspired. He didn't believe any of this stuff, and he let everybody know about it. And family members, every year when we'd go up for Decoration Day, Carolyn knows what that is, we talked to him and say, listen, why don't you consider being baptized? So one year, several years ago, I was sitting on his porch and I said, you know what you need to do. I said, your wife's been in the church all life. People's been talking to you. People who are already dead have been talking to you. You know what you need to do. And I'd like to baptize you. But I want to tell you something. I'm not going to ever mention it again. We're not going to badger you with this. You know what you need to do. At any point you feel like you want to be baptized, you call me. I'll come from Atlanta to Crossville, Tennessee, and I'll baptize you. It went on. This last Memorial Day when we went up for Decoration Day, Linda had got some things from Apologetics Press and took to him. He thinks the sun sets and rises, or rises then sets, and Linda. Linda's the only one in the whole family that can now reach this man. So she goes to Apologetics Press, sends some things and takes it up there, talks to him, sits down on the porch and says, I want you to read these things. So the day we went up there, the day that Linda got so sick herself, he was terminally ill. The doctor says, we've done everything we can do. He's got an infection in his lung. He'd fallen. He'd broken his neck. He had this big harness on his head. Have y'all ever seen those metal frames on his head? He was in one of those things. They said, we can't do anything else for him. We're making him comfortable. So we went up to see him. And so about halfway through the visit, there were several people there. His sister was there who was Baptist. His daughter-in-law was there who was the wife of a Baptist preacher. His son was there who had left the church and gone into the Baptist church. There was Linda and I, naturally from the Church of Christ, there was a daughter there that was still faithful to the church. So that's the setting around the hospital bed. So he says, Richard, did y'all come up here just to see me? And I said, yes. We made this trip. Are you going back today? And I said, well, yes. He says, well, I wanted Jean, who is his wife, to be here. She had gone home. I wanted her to be here when I said this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. I thought he was going to tell me what he wanted me to do for his funeral, because he wants me to preach his funeral, and I thought that's what it was. He says, I want to be baptized. Let me tell y'all something. She took him the information on Memorial Day. You and I'm talking about, how old was he, Linda? In his 80s. He said, I want to be baptized. And I said, okay. And he says, I want you to baptize me. Well, I scratched my head, because here he is on oxygen. He's got this broken neck. How are we going to do this? So I said, well, I'm going to go down. We'll see if we can get a jacuzzi here in the hospital, and we'll see if we can't use that. And I think we can baptize him in a jacuzzi. So I go down with his daughter, and we start talking to the nurse, and we're trying to set it up. And the nurse says, I don't think we can do that. I don't think the hospital people will let us. Liability. You've ever heard of liability? So what happened was, we called Allison at home and Sydney. Said, get on the phone and get on the Knoxville preachers and see what you can do for us, because we're here trying to do it on this end. We need some help making some calls. So they started calling all the preachers in the Knoxville area. One of the preachers there happened to know the administrator and gave the administrator a call. But during this time, I started back down the room. Linda comes running out of the room. Richard, they're down there telling him he don't have to be baptized. Well, his sister was Baptist. His daughter-in-law was a daughter of a Baptist preacher, so they're telling him he doesn't have to be baptized. All he's got to do is just to believe. And so during that time, they called the chaplain in, and so he comes in, and here we are. I already told you who was around the bed, and now we've added the chaplain to the situation. Well, now all this is done, faith saves family, so let's don't get off what I'm really trying to say here. So the chaplain kind of starts making, well, who are all these nice people around your bed? And he said, and that right there is a Church of Christ preacher. And I said, well, there might be a reason for that, but the chaplain says, well, I am so glad that you let God into your heart, and I'll baptize you. And we said, I'll baptize you. He said, yeah, I'll sprinkle you. And he looked up at that guy. And here's a guy that all his life he'd been studying to disprove the Bible. He says, I have studied the Bible enough. I know the Bible, and I have to be immersed to be baptized. Sprinkling will not do any good. And so the conversation went on and on and on around there. And finally, I couldn't stand it any longer, so I stepped up. I've heard them talking. So I pointed over to the chaplain, and I said, you must be Methodist because you sprinkle. I looked at the sister, and I said, we know you're Baptist because you're telling him he doesn't have to be baptized. I looked over to the son, and I said, you know what he needs to do. I looked at the daughter-in-law, and I said, do you think he can be saved by faith only? I think the Bible teaches that you have to be immersed, you have to be baptized for the remission of your sins. But let me say something. It doesn't make any difference what you believe, what I believe. He believes he has to be baptized to be saved, and he has to be baptized. The chaplain said, hope you guys have a good day. Glad to have met you. And out the door he went. His sister had driven from Crossville, Tennessee to Knoxville, Tennessee hour and a half drive, and she'd been there 15 minutes. She says, we got to get back to Crossville. Out the door she went. And the sister-in-law, the daughter-in-law didn't say a word. She just left. She just went home. And so here we are, left. But the hospital would not let us baptize. The administrator of the hospital is a member of the Church of Christ. But he would not allow us to use the facility there to baptize him. So we scratched our head what we're going to do. Because he's terminally ill now. And he wants to be baptized. What are we going to do? Nothing we could do. Our hands were tied. We could not do a thing. So that was on a Saturday. Monday, they were going to take him back to Crossville. Linda said, okay, we're going to go back because we were getting ready to go on the trip. We're going to go back to Atlanta. We're going to get our camper. We come into Crossville. We'll baptize. We'll be there when you get there. And we'll baptize you there because in Crossville, it's a big Church of Christ town. And I guarantee you somebody there will help us get it done. So we come home, and it's a few hours. I have Linda in the hospital emergency room, and I'm standing there. Is she going to live or is she going to die? Here's a guy in Knoxville, Tennessee that's expecting me to come to Crossville on Monday to baptize him. And you're talking about being torn. So I couldn't leave. I couldn't. There was no way that I'd leave and go to Knoxville to leave Linda here. So on Monday night, they got him back to Crossville. It was really late. Tuesday morning at the nursing home in Knoxville, they filled the jacuzzi up just as high as they could fill it. They got it, and they slid him down in it, and they got it up to his neck. I got pictures of this, y'all. I started to bring him and put him on. They put him water up to his neck. And they baptized that man for the remission of his sins. He called me that afternoon. Here I am. I've been at the hospital all the time. He called me that afternoon. And he says, Richard, I am a full-fledged member of the Church of Christ. Here's a man. And listen to this. He's gotten stronger. He got out of the nursing home hospice situation. He got home and he's attending services. And he was fatally ill. The doctor said, we've done all we can do. And he told his son, and I don't see how in the world his son not going to be able to come back to the church through all of this. But he told his son, he said, after I was baptized, I asked God to give me strength. And he's home and he's going to services. Now, I know it was a long story, but I love the story. And I had to tell you all about that. The point is, faith saves families. So if you have a family member that you think is never going to make it, you're never going to be able to convert, don't give up. Don't give up. The only time you can give up is, I guess, when you put them in the ground. Faith saves family. Or maybe I'll have time for one more. I took so long on that. Verses 8 through 10.
By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going. By faith, he went to live in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God.
Abraham had no earthly idea where he was going. Now, how many of you ladies, and you young girls, think about this. Your husband comes in one evening and says, we're going somewhere tomorrow. Well, where we're going? I don't know where we're going. We're moving. You ladies stop and think about that. We're moving. You might be moving, but I'm staying here. Listen, Abraham was a rich man. He had a nice place to live, guys. I'm convinced of that. It doesn't really tell us, but he was rich. He had a good place. His wife had it made, guys. And he comes in and he says, we're going to take a journey. We're leaving. We're packing up and we're moving. And she says, you out of your mind. You got to be kidding. No, what'd she do? She started packing, didn't she? I don't know how many of you ladies would do that, but she started packing. The point I want to make on this, he trusted God, he had enough faith, and he started out and he never looked back. He never looked back. He didn't worry about what was back there. He didn't worry about the family that was back there. He didn't worry about the pleasures of what he might have had, earthly things. He got himself, lived in, and he looked forward and he never looked back. And brethren, I suggest we are empowered by faith, and when we do this, we look to where we're going and we don't look back. We look back, we get confused, we get mixed up. We'll say, well, back there, no, back there, that's over with. Faith looks forward and moves forward and never looks back.
All he had on the matter was God's word, which that was not. The problem with temptation was trying to measure the value and the wisdom of things according to earthly standards, according to how it appears through this world's eyes.
Exactly. Good, very good point. And that's, I guess that's kind of human. We measure it that way. And he could have, but he looked forward and he says, here we go. So I want to encourage you to always look forward. I want you to help Chuck to look forward. I want you to get behind Chuck and look forward. What's behind is behind. We've been a long ways. Our journey has taken us a long ways from the time you guys left Smyrna. So we came over here we came to the funeral, we came here and got this building. But we can't look back on these things now. That's done. We're here. We've got to look at where we are now and move forward. And that's a man right there that can take you forward. If you just get behind him and look that way. Pray with me, please. Father, thank you so much for your love and your care. And thank you that we can have faith in you. Empower us with your faith. Help us to do the things that you want us to do, and help us to look forward and move forward. Help the congregation here to support and love and get behind Chuck and give him the strength and the wisdom and the ability to move the congregation forward. Be with us all as we are a family. Help us to continue to love one another. Support us when we do things that are right, but defeat us in all the wrong. In Christ's name. Amen.